All right. So, yeah, today we're going to hear about writing for kids animated TV, and we're going to hear about a really cool award for writing that our good friend Britton Payne has created an organization to do this. And Britton and I have been friends for the last couple of years, and it's great seeing some of his dreams come true. So, just if this is your first time to Autism and Entertainment, welcome. And just so you know, our mission is about expanding employment for work ready autistic talent in the entertainment industry. And we do that by having people expand their idea of diversity to include neuro inclusion. We do that by demonstrating your amazing talents and skills and changing the brand of autism to be one of superpowers versus anything else. We also do that for organizations, telling them about resources and things that are available that can help them hire you. And then finally, helping you on your journey. Everybody's going to have a different journey. So I want to make sure that you guys can see different journeys that people have taken in their career. And this is a great opportunity to see that. We fund ourselves through membership. So if you're a member, yay, thank you. A membership is $10 a month or $100 for a year. If you're a regional center client, you might be able to get them to refund you on that gift. And it entitles you a lot of things, some of which are going to be experienced by a few members. I saw Robert here, and Robert is going to be able to speak with Daniel after the meeting. And if Michael is here, I will look quickly after he's waving his hands. Yeah, Michael's going to talk to Britton. So thank you. But don't miss out. If you're not a member, you're missing out on things. We've had some amazing studio tours. We went to Cabillion Studios last month, and we're planning others. And we are working on a mentor program with Exceptional Minds that will be launching in January, and much more. So if you're a member, you hear about these things, but if you're a member, we don't tell you. So it's important that you think about becoming a member, and the more members we have, the more things we can do, because all the money goes back to helping you. So please consider membership if you haven't already. I also want to advertise, Britt and I were talking, he says, I just was watching Anna Matt's podcast. So Anna Matt is a YouTuber who is a good friend of Autism and Entertainment, and he does a quarterly discussion group with us where he talks about a topic, but then the people there get to share their experiences and their thoughts. And it's this Sunday at 1:00, and the topic is the best of anthropomorphic animals, which my husband says, isn't that all cartoons? And it does seem like it's quite a few. But so he's a wonderful, wonderful guy, amazingly knowledgeable. And if you haven't done this, it's just a great opportunity to interact with a bunch of people who have the same jam as you. So I've got plenty of time for you, Britt. Let me highlight you for the folks here. And I'm going to highlight your amazing panel. Well, hi, Britt. Welcome.
Thank you. So I wanted to introduce myself a little bit, and then I will introduce Naya Wright and Kirk Cushion and Daniel Scherstrom, all of whom are going to be on the panel today as well. As some of you may already know who've seen me before, met me before, I'm an entertainment law attorney. I'm a lifelong comic book fan, and I have worked in animation in particular as an attorney since 2016 in Hollywood. I regularly speak about the nexus of autism and pop culture in Comic-Cons and elsewhere around the country, and recently started a nonprofit called the Autism Scene, which is dedicated to the inclusion of more explicitly autistic characters in kids' pop culture. So towards that end, the Autism Scene and the panelists are working on it in one form or another, started a script writing competition called the AUSPEC Awards. You can find out all about it at theautismscene.org, and we'll repeat that at the end to make sure everybody knows it, where there's tons of information about it. But the short summary of it is You pick a kids animated television program. You write a spec script for it, an 11-minute speculative script. You include at least one series regular meaningfully interacting with an explicitly autistic character, and then you turn it in. And the ones that win different categories are going to get meetings with Hollywood showrunners and executives and producers and the kinds of people who, in the near future, are looking to hire writers. So that might point you in the right direction of being able to either start or improve your career. And the grand prize winner will get $5,000 in categories. Some of the categories include things like funniest script and best sci-fi script, best adventure script, best use of an AAC device, best non-speaking character, best little kids script, stuff like that. And we'll be talking more about that, I'm sure, as we go along. But that is also the focus of this panel, which is why I pulled together a couple of people who have written a bunch of animated scripts and know a lot about writing, and also have some experience with autism and writing autistic characters that could help you as you prepare your script for the competition. So that's generally the focus. We'll, field any questions and talk about any topics that make sense. But that's what we're hoping to do. We're hoping to help you as you consider writing a script for this competition, the OSPEC Awards, to do your very best with it. So the people that we pulled together, I'm going to rattle off their bios. And so first we're starting with Naya Wright. Naya, who's a native of East Orange, New Jersey, one of the great states in America. And she believes a great deal in television. She created the non-speaking character Nasant from Ada Twist Scientist. She's also written episodes for PBS's Carl the Collector, which is the first animated kids show with an explicitly autistic title character. Naya is freelance writing for television and working for her mother's nonprofit, Nasant's Place, a nonprofit making a difference in the lives of children and families affected by autism in and around underserved inner city communities by providing educational and recreational programs, social outings, readings, and so much more. Another panelist is Kirk Cushion, an accomplished animation writer and story editor whose work spans television, video games, and comics. His recent credits include Hello Kitty and Friends' Super Cute Adventures, Paw Patrol Rocky's Garage, and Blippi's Disney Vehicle Challenge, among many others. He was also one of the lead writers on the award-winning 2024 video game Hello Kitty Island Adventure for Apple Arcade and Nintendo Switch. And beyond animation, Kirk has written and created several original comic book series, which are great, including Super Teentopia and Ozopolis, which is rooted in the Oz universe, the Wizard of Oz universe. And his latest graphic novel is set to be released by Scholastic in 2026. And then our fourth panelist, if you include me as a panelist, Daniel Scherstrom, is an autistic professional screenwriter, a children's book author, creative consultant, and registered social worker. He co-created and wrote for the autistic character Bruno for the kids' animated show Thomas and Friends All Engines Go. And Daniel is also the author of the picture book, Do You Want to Play? Making Friends with an Autistic Kid. So I'd like to thank Daniel, Naya, and Kirk for all of you for being here. How'd I do? Does that feel relatively accurate, those intros? All right, good.
Great, go.
All right. Well, let me start with the first question. So the idea, if people are signing up to be a part of this competition, they have to pick a show, but they also have to think of an autistic character who can interact with that show. And it's all the creative ideation, the putting together your thoughts into a creative script. So when you guys have written, and I'll start with Kirk, when you guys have written animated series scripts as an assignment, because that's basically what this is, you're not just sitting around thinking, what would you like to write? You've got an assignment now. How do you start creatively when it's an assignment? Kirk, you want to start?
Well, sometimes you're assigned something you've pitched, so you have an idea. I just literally got 2 pitches approved like at 7 a.m. this morning. So I have to flesh those out to outlines now. But then sometimes I'll get a phone call from somebody saying, hey, we're doing this thing. Here we have, a character, say Tom and Jerry, hypothetically, and they're going to go to see the Wizard of Oz, which is actually a cartoon they did. And they give you some basic stuff. So you're basically serving the client, either if it's your idea or if they give you something to go with, and you just tackle it. You have to listen. A big part of writing is listening. You're listening to what everyone's saying. A lot of times there's a lot of voices. You have the director, you have the creative executive, you have their boss, you have different people, even from toys, telling you things. And you just take it all in and you bake it. It's like brownies with M&Ms and Reese's Pieces sometimes and colored sprinkles. And you just try to make that brownie taste as good as you can with all the input.
How about you, Daniel? How do you kick things off when you're trying to come up with a creative idea?
Yeah, for sure. So similar, I start in a similar way to Kirk. When I was working on Thomas, they would usually have a general premise for an episode that they wanted to give me. or I would pitch one to them, and sometimes they'd approve it. What I always found it helpful to do was to create a beat sheet first, which is basically a 10 or 12 point a 10 or 12 bullet point defining the sort of the main events of the story. Um, and then that way you can see if there's any big changes you need to make without having to make like a whole bunch of different changes. And then from there, you get feedback from your head writer or from other folks, and then you can expand that more to, like, let's say, a one-page summary or something like that, and then eventually you just keep building and keep building that out until you get your script. It's really no different if you're writing a kids animated show or a 1 hour adult drama or whatever. You've still got that first act where you set up the problem and the characters and the world, and then the second act where things get bigger and you have your climax, and then the ending where things resolve. It's really no different.
Daniel, that's really helpful, especially ordering it like that. And as a person who's never written a script for kids animated TV, the idea that you start with essentially the assignment and maybe an idea. You did say the very first thing, a premise. How long is a premise, if I could put you on the spot, Daniel? Like what's an example of a premise?
2 or 3 sentences. Bob wakes up one day and he sees that his favorite toy is missing and he has to go find it. How is he going to do it? Like that, that's your very basic premise, and then you expand on it from there.
That's great. Thank you. That's really helpful. Naya, what's something that you think about when you're starting to put together creative ideas in addition to what Kirk and Daniel have said?
Yeah, for me, I'm looking for things, or I'm thinking of things that like I want to see or that I wish I could have seen when I was a little kid. Like that's how I honestly like writing for kids content has been quite healing to my inner child. I do a lot of inner child work, and it really has. And so even creating the character of Nason, when I got the opportunity to pitch for Ada to a Scientist on Netflix, it was like, what do I wish I had saw when I was younger? And because autism affected me personally, I really wanted to figure out how could I seamlessly introduce a character with autism in a way that explained it to young kids, but also kept it fun and exciting. And so I'm always coming from a very personal place when I start writing anything creatively, and then using what I know about the show. And because I was a script coordinator, like having access to the characters and the Bible and learning more about the world in which it's in, and then kind of starting to, like Kirk said, make the brownies.
Well, while I'm with you, Naya, there were three questions that came out of that. First is going to be, what's a Bible? But I think maybe we'll come back to that and have Kirk explain that when we get to it. And the second is, if you're creating an autistic character, which you have done, and Daniel, you have as well, written for autistic characters. Autism presents in so many different kinds of ways. How, Naya, when you were creating Nason from whole cloth, how did you decide the ways in which the character's autism would present?
Yeah. So for me, again, it was going to my personal experience so Nason is inspired by my younger brother, Nason. I don't go too far from the truth. My younger brother, Nason, he's now 21, nonverbal with autism, about 6'6", 350 pounds, like the gentlest giant. And so I grew up with having a little brother. And so I started with the things about Nason that I had experienced. He loves chicken nuggets and squishing his food together. He's a very tall kid. And I think often when I would look to kind of see like what representation was there out there for children with autism, I didn't really see any Black children represented. I didn't see any tall children represented. And so wanting to, kind of create this character that was true to my brother's experience. And additionally, wanting to do research to find out, okay, what other ways does autism present in people? Because I do recognize that it's a spectrum. And I think that's one of the most important things when trying to educate someone about what autism is that autism is not a one size fits all. There is literally a huge spectrum and it presents very differently. So wanting to try to, based on my research, incorporate other elements of autism that I didn't experience personally, but that I read was something common for people with autism, like the AAC device I included. My brother personally doesn't use that, but I had found that was something a lot of people with autism do use to communicate, and wanting to show that people with autism can communicate, they just have different tools than we might.
Yeah, and Daniel, for the same question to you. So you also have written an autistic character. And how do you or your team decide how autism will present when you create the character?
Absolutely, and I would mostly agree with Naya that you base it somewhat on your own experience and somewhat on the experience that you see from other folks and from your research. I'm autistic myself, so that definitely informed a lot of my development of Bruno. Um, autism definitely presents in many different ways, right? And we didn't want to give Bruno quote unquote everything because that wouldn't be realistic. No one character can represent the full diversity of the autism spectrum. Mattel was a really great partner in developing Bruno. They really wanted to do it right. So they gave me a lot of latitude in terms of designing the character's personality and things. So too often what I see in autistic characters is they're either savants who can like almost do no wrong, except maybe they're a little socially awkward or something, or they're someone who is more of an object of pity and can't do anything themselves, things like that. For most of us, that's true for some people, but for most of us, we're somewhere in between. So I wrote Bruno as just kind of an average guy. He's smart. He's got a great sense of humor. He has things that he likes and things he doesn't like. He's a valued member of the team. He doesn't always understand metaphors and things, and he can sometimes get pretty overwhelmed if there's too much noise or if things don't go according to his meticulous plans. But he is a valued member of that friend group, and he's very good at his job. So at any time that his friends might help him with something, say when he's a little bit overwhelmed or something like that, we always find a way to show that he contributes something as well, whether it's helping out with a problem or just lending an ear when someone's sad. It was also important to me to use this opportunity to combat dangerous misconceptions about autism. So, for instance, contrary to popular belief, Bruno feels deep empathy when his friends are not feeling well. And he is capable of managing his own life, even if he needs a little help now and then, like everyone does. Basically, I wrote the character, like Naya said, I wrote the kind of character that I really needed to see growing up.
That's really fantastic. Those are both really great answers, and also in the spirit of the competition and the autism scene in general, just trying to find ways to bring stories out that haven't already been seen. They can be broadly categorized as stories about autistic characters, but to Daniel's point, there are so many different ways that you can present autistic characters. Wouldn't it be nice to present a way that no one has seen before, or that gives a little additional light into a different version of the way autism might present? So, Kirk, I want to throw to you now. For Naya said that she had access to the Bible, and that I guess gets into a question that you and I've been talking about a bunch, is about the voice of a show, I think was the way you put it. So could you tell us what a Bible is and sort of steer that into describing the voice of a show, what that means and why that would be important for a competition like this?
It would be normally they're very hard to get a hold of, but if you're
the show Bible. Well, what is it? Start with that.
Yeah, it's don't spend a lot of time trying to find one if you're writing for a specific show. You'll pick that up watching a show, but if you're in the room and someone's throwing this term around, you should be familiar with it. It's basically an episode guide and character guide, and it lays out all the details of the world from the mythology, brief character descriptions. It's all the building blocks you need. It's almost like a guide. It is a guide. And what has happened as executive producer or story editor has developed it with the producers and the studios. And, if there's a company involved like Mattel or Sanrio, everything's locked down. And that's basically your foundation, which you build on. And I've been working on a show for 5 years, and we still talk or argue about the Bible, about what was in the Bible, maybe in all the stuff we've developed. I literally had this conversation 2 days ago at lunch, and we were arguing about, was this in the Bible originally, or did we come up with this? So you still use it, surprisingly. So I told my coworkers I'm going to go home and look at it because it's printed out somewhere. But it's something everybody works from, because what happens is when you first start on a show, and you guys aren't going to run into this, A lot of times, you're writing these characters for the first time. You haven't heard the voice actors. There's never been any episode you can watch. So that becomes an important document to help you do your script. Now, when the show's in its 10th, 12th, whatever season, you have a feel for it. You can go as even if you're a new writer, you can go back in. As a writer on a show for a long time, I still go back and watch my episodes in particular to remind myself of phrases, running jokes. So literally as a writer, you're going to always do your homework, whether it's the start of the series with only the Bible or further on down the line. And writers that are coming into a show, they may not even give you the Bible because they may not even know where it's at unless it's brand new. I mean, seriously, it's just like there's no how-to guide, and you might have to go back and on your own and do your own homework and go, oh, I'm gonna watch as much of these shows as I can and go, okay, if this is on the screen, this is probably something that was in the Bible or fits the voice of the show because the
Well, as
shows.
a person who, yeah, and you as a person who's been in charge of the show and looking at scripts that come in, for example, even if you're not specifically looking at the Bible, conceptually, the Bible describes the voice of the show, what would fit, what would make sense, what wouldn't make sense. SpongeBob doesn't smoke, might be written down in a Bible somewhere,
Yeah.
right? So if a new script comes in and says SpongeBob enters smoking a cigar, you're going to know, oh, well, that doesn't fit the voice of the show. That's not something that's in the Bible. Can you talk a little bit about having the importance of having a script that you write matching the voice of a show versus being a very special episode or fan fiction?
That's the hard part, and there's no real solid answer because you're expected. A lot of people, I've been there too. You guys are sitting there, you guys are watching this going, oh man, if I could talk to the creator of SpongeBob, who I think is no longer with us, but if I could talk to the producer of SpongeBob, I got this great idea for this episode. The producers aren't interested in your great idea. They're interested in idea generators. They're interested if I bring this guy on, he's going to have to give me 35 ideas. When I give him some notes, I recently had a situation where I solved the problem. I literally told the producer, I gave you gold. I know the producer really well, so I was kind of joking, but it was true. And then they decided that, oh yeah, this is great. Then in a new draft, they had to get rid of it because it was too hard to film. So
Mm.
sometimes you're solving a problem and then they love it and they come back and go, oh, yeah, that's literally too hard for us to film. It doesn't fit in the budget, the time constraints. So you're coming in with a lot of ideas, and so you have to have original ideas, but it has to match. So but I've been told a lot of times, hey, it's great because you pitch outside of the box. But I'm always aware of the brand I'm pitching. So again, I know I'm not going to have someone with a firearm or smoking a cigarette, drinking some whiskey. That's just not going to fly.
Yeah, when I worked on Blues Clues a little bit, again, just as an attorney, not as a creative, I was aware that they had a Bible that had been around for a very long time. And there was one element of it that's like, they don't know about brand names. So if you wrote a script that said, oh, let's go to McDonald's, or remember that time we went to McDonald's, they would say,
Mhm.
actually, we don't have brand names. Like Steve and Blue don't know what brand names are. Um, Daniel and Naya, did you guys have any kinds of voice of the show restrictions that you had to work around when you pitched ideas? Daniel, you want to go first?
Yeah, for sure. I'll tell you, it was a very interesting challenge implementing an autistic character into a world where everyone is a train.
Mhm.
Uh, but we did it. He's got him right here to prove it. But yeah, it's a balancing act. The characters on Thomas and Friends, for instance, they don't eat, so we weren't able to, for instance, show Bruno dealing with the food sensitivities that some autistic people have. Uh, but instead, what we did to show some of his sensory challenges was we made it so that he's sensitive when there's very heavy winds. It makes him really uncomfortable, or when there's really loud noises. And so what he does is he has these. He doesn't have hands, obviously, but he has these little stairs on his side that he can kind of flap when he really needs to stim. And we thought about, okay, how can we give him something like noise canceling headphones for when things are too loud? Well, he can't put them on himself with his hands, but what we came up with was he has these steam headphones that he can kind of make from his stovepipe when he needs. So that's how you can solve kind of those practical challenges. And we were also the fact that Bruno is a brake car and he can't move on his own. We were able to use that as a good metaphor as well for how different kinds of people can be just as important to their community as anyone else, even if it's in a different way. Because he may not be able to move, but a good train is going to need a freight car. So,
Mhm.
so sometimes there's challenges, but sometimes you can turn those challenges into a really interesting storytelling opportunity.
How about you, Naya? Have you had any voice issues where you tried to figure out a way to match it and figured out how to solve it?
Yeah, so I didn't have too many restrictions with when I created Nissan, which to what you were saying, Daniel, this food sensitivity, because Ada and her friends are human beings and they live in the kind of real world. I was able to show Nissan like sniffing the nugget and playing with it, and so less restrictions, but more just like keep in mind things that I think we talked about within the writer's room when it was about creating this character. And one of the things, to what Daniel said earlier, of making sure that Nissan wasn't just like a prop, like he wasn't in the episode just to like, show what autism was, but that you felt like he was an integral part of the main character. So it became a little running thing within the episode where Ada was explaining to her friends, like, why Nissan necessarily acted differently in certain moments and what prompted that. And then it became like Iggy and Rosie wanting so bad for Nissan to like them. Like, how do we get Nissan to be our friend? And because Nissan's cool, and you'd be cool too if you're his friend. And so it was less restrictions and more just things that we wanted to be mindful of when creating this character, not to fall into any traps, and really just depict Nissan as any other character that we would introduce into this world, with any other things about them that are unique to them.
I'm going to use that as a chance to slide into two of our questions that we got on the chat. One is from Jalen Cole, which is about how do you write for kids without talking down to the viewers? And that's, you just sort of addressed some of that, Naya, so we'll sort of throw that to you. But then the second part of that is for the purpose of the competition. This is from Robert. Can the interactions be about anything, or do they have to specifically be about their autism? That's for the purpose of the competition. I'll start off by saying for the purpose of the competition, as far as I'm concerned, there's no rule that says the interactions have to be about their autism. It could say, I'm autistic, and then they just move on and have the rest of the conversation. But you also can. And then there's some certain level of kind of something Daniel was talking about before, is if there's a presentation of autism that you've seen before, the superpower version of autism, that you can do that. But it also means that it has been seen before and maybe isn't going to be as striking to a judge as like, ooh, this is fresh, this is new, this is within the voice of the show, but something I've never seen before. And you've figured out a way to present autism in a different way than I've seen, given the restrictions of the show. And it's more impressive, potentially. But if you've written a brilliant script, a beautiful script where the interaction doesn't specifically address the autism, that might be great too. So I don't personally have an answer other than to say, Robert, specifically to you and broadly, that there's no rule about the nature of the way autism is presented, other than that it is explicit. So Naya, that was a very long-winded question, and I'm going to dump that on you, Naya, because from New Jersey, at least we speak the same language. So how do you write without talking down to viewers? And can the interactions be about anything, or do they have to specifically be about autism?
Yeah. So to the talking down, one of the best pieces of advice I got from Christine, who helped to create Ada Twist for Netflix, did Doc McStuffins, like just a giant within the animation space. She said to us early on in the writers' room, for me, was that you never want to talk down to kids. Like, you want to talk to them as if they know exactly what you're saying, as if they can retain the information. It was the best piece of advice I could have gotten coming into the animation kid space, because kids are people. And honestly, kids are our future. So if we feel like we can't talk to them like they're people and they understand things, then we're going to have a rocky future. So for me, it's really thinking about, okay, so if I'm trying to explain a concept, especially working on Ada to a Scientist, it was a science-based kids show. So we were already working with things that I barely understood. Like some of the, like our scientists, we had science consultants who would help us to break down like a topic. Like, even I remember one episode we had about balloons, and oh my Lanta, it was like the friction of balloons and the static nature. And, we needed someone to explain it to us so we could figure out how to explain it to kids. And so it's finding the way for you as the writer to understand what this topic is, and then to not dilute it, but to make it fun and digestible for the age range in which you're talking to. So it's not being like, well, this is how this is done and do. It's like, oh my Lanta, look how you do this and this. And it's like making it exciting for a kid to be engaged and interested, but not feeling like you have to take out any of the facts, because then you're just leaving them with clouds, and clouds are great, but you need more than that. So
how about you, Daniel?
Yeah, sorry, can I have the question again, please?
Well, it was a question that came from the chat there too. One about how do you write without talking down to your
Right,
viewers? For Thomas in
right,
particular, you've got very young viewers.
right, for sure. So I would answer that in I would have two answers to that. First, I would want to see an autistic character who's allowed to be an actual character, not just
Hmm.
an autistic character. And I also want to see I want to see stories that are real stories, not just stories where we say this is what autism is so much. But
Hmm.
I'll break those both down. Um, First of all, I want the autistic character to be allowed to actually be a character. It's pretty simple. You know, too often we get boiled down to a few stereotypical traits. Give me a fun and a challenging story where we see the depth of your character as a person. What are they good at? Where do they struggle? What are their dreams? How do they handle adversity? How do others act around them? Even when you're writing for preschoolers or any age group, we were able to mine a lot of character depth and emotion from Bruno by just having him confront things like his fears or his challenges in a way that is authentic to the autism experience. We didn't need to have a whole episode where we're talking about these are traits of autism. We just had the plot and the character came out in that. And then the other thing I would say is many shows. Well, I guess this is kind of related, but many shows will have an autistic character in just a very special episode kind of thing, where we're not really allowed to be characters. Um, so yeah, what really made Bruno successful as a character, and he was very well received, was that we didn't just have stories where his friends learn about why he doesn't understand the same social cues as them or why he has to stim. Uh, the stories are about how does Bruno help them solve the important delivery? How does he help his friend when he's having a bad day? The character comes out when you have the story, when you know your characters and you know the situation they're in. Their autistic traits will just come out naturally. So just trust yourself and just write a good story.
And I did want to
Turkey.
add,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Naya.
oh, sorry, I just wanted to add one thing too in terms of how not to like, try to talk down to kids. I think it's really important to use the tool of animation. Like animation is such a specific and wonderful medium because you can use like, and especially depending on the show, like if the show has like, you know, 2D animation within 3D, like figuring out ways like visually to show things, I think it's also a great way to communicate maybe bigger ideas to kids in a way that's digestible. Like even in our episode when we talked about the spectrum piece of autism, a giant rainbow appeared on screen and was like lighting up as they were kind of going through the different colors on the rainbow. So really encouraging to use the medium of animation as a way to help talk about maybe more complex ideas.
Mhm. And Kirk, I want to throw to you too, just essentially as one of the judges in the competition. What do you think you'll be looking for when you see the autistic characters that will come in for the Aspec Awards competition?
Well, I think Daniel really nailed it, but I just feel when you have some experience, when you have someone in your life that's on the spectrum, you'll see that, and almost every character on your show does something. Everybody's on the spectrum a little bit with different ways, so you want to see it in an organic way. You want to see it in a fun and different way, but again, just natural. Like I'm gonna know if you spend some time, because chances are people entering probably have some either are on the spectrum or have some experience. So that's going to kind of solve itself. But a writer who hasn't, I'm going to want to see that they've done more than just look at it on Wikipedia or put it into, ChatGPT or something, which don't ever do that. But they've gone and they've said, "Hey, my friend has a sister. Oh, Naya's brother. I'm gonna go talk. I'm asked Naya about her brother and so forth." So you've done a little bit of homework and you develop your take. So it's not just reading it; it's experience. And when you talk to Naya, you're gonna get some funny stories. And you go, "Oh, you know what? That's when they went to Magic Mountain." And yeah, ask Naya's permission before you mine her story, though. But yeah.
I do want to get to a technical question too. Daniel basically walked us through his process, about coming up with a premise and then bullet points and then fleshing it out. Um, How do you format a script, though, Kirk, for an 11-minute animated kids series?
Well, first of all, you need to be using a professional screenwriting program. So luckily, those are available. If you have any seriousness in being in this business, get Final Draft. I know there's some other ones. People will always pitch them to me, but Final Draft just does it for you. But what you want to do is find some samples, and those are online, or you can go to the Writers Guild Foundation Library. You have to make an appointment. So just Google Writers Guild Foundation Library. Hopefully, you live in the LA area, make an appointment, and you can just go read scripts. Maybe not even animation scripts. Just get a feel for a script. Don't order a book or go to the library that has maybe a script for a show, but it might not be in script format because there's sort of a universal script language that we all follow. So if I looked at a script and it was so off base and someone just sent in a play, I'd probably look at that and go, well, you know what? They didn't do 5 minutes of homework, and they're maybe not. Well, to me, as a judge slash boss, I'm going to go, they haven't done their homework. They're not serious about this business. So it's not hard to, present in screenplay format. It's pretty universal, but don't get hung up on if you have two scripts from two shows that are exactly, you have a Star Trek, one Star Trek series, another Star Trek series, the scripts are going to be a little different because maybe there's more description and less dialogue. So don't get hung up on the style. But just, if you're serious about screenwriting, you're reading scripts. I'm reading scripts on a regular basis. I look at scripts all the time just to get ideas and see how other people are doing it. So I'm assuming someone that's entering this contest has already done that homework and they're familiar with it. But if say you just discover this and like, oh, I'd like to try this, it's not that hard to figure it out. Just do a little bit of homework.
Yeah, and you can take a look at the autismscene.org, where on the Auspex Awards page, I believe we put up, if we haven't yet, I think we did put up a sample script that won't read really clearly, but it's a real professional script that was actually used in a Hollywood, animated kids series production that I've anonymized, so you can't tell what show it is. But it shows you the format. It shows you what it can look like. To Kirk's point, they don't all have to look identical, but they ought to look professional.
Yeah, because the reason for this, just real quick, is so when it goes to the producer and the line producer and it goes to the prop person, it goes to costume person, it's all universal. Everybody knows how to look at it and they mark it up. So the script is a blueprint. So it's just not us being like, oh, you can't be in our club unless you know the secret password. It's because it's a document that many departments use, and it's a basis for everything. I got a note yesterday. My creative exec said, oh, I changed the name of the character. Make sure when you revise it, use the draft I'm sending you right now because we're already starting the casting process. So casting is already using a script I'm still working on. So that's why it all needs to be a fairly uniform format.
While you're formatting it, Naya, what level of detail do you put in your stage directions in an animated script?
Yeah, so for me, I necessarily don't put too much stage direction because it is the job of the director. Like you don't want to tell a director kind of how to do their job. Like your job is to write the stories, to describe, if there is like an added animated element like the rainbow I talked about earlier, kind of talking about what that looks like. But generally you don't want to put too much stage direction in it because then you're kind of zapping the creative juices that the director is supposed to incorporate. So yeah, I would definitely focus more on the story, the dialogue, the personalities of the characters, the catchphrases, like the things that you as the writer are supposed to infuse, and then let the other departments, have their fun too.
Kirk, what's your favorite catchphrase that you've injected into a script?
Me?
Yeah.
I like putting in movie quotes, and maybe I shouldn't be putting movie quotes from Scarface and Hello Kitty. But I do it, and everybody seems to like it. So when you watch one of my episodes, there's a lot of Easter eggs. But I do have a running list of my characters' catchphrases because I want to make sure I use them. And like for Blippi, I asked them the other day. I said, "Can you give me the characters' catchphrases?" I'm familiar with that property, but I wanted the producer to give me a catchphrase list, and of course, they have one. So you want to make sure you're using those when you're writing for a property because then that also tells them you know what you're doing and you've done your homework. But don't be afraid to ask for things.
Yeah. Daniel, I have a question. When you have written Bruno, the autistic character, what kind of feedback did you get on the character, either during the process or afterwards? And how did the character change from the beginning of the process to what was in the episode at the end. You've talked a little bit about that, but I am curious to know, starting with when you sort of had the idea, I think you should be like this. How much did that change based on feedback that you got?
Absolutely. And for the record, Bruno's catchphrase is "Give me a break" because he likes puns.
That's great.
Yeah. So feedback on Bruno has been fantastic, both internally and externally throughout the whole process. So to start off with, so in addition to hiring me as a writer, Mattel brought in other consultants from the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network and Easter Seals, just so we could, get some more minds on it. And I'm sure a lot of people here know how, let's say, discerning a lot of autistic people can be in their opinions. I am one of them. And yet somehow 95% of my initial character sheet for Bruno stayed intact after they looked at it. They were pretty pleased with it. And then the things that we differed on, we negotiated and we talked it out. And then, things went pretty smoothly. Once we revealed Bruno and started launching his episodes, his movies, his YouTube series, things like that, the response was tremendously positive. He was nominated for diversity awards. Some popular autistic YouTubers talked about him and praised him. And I had a lot of people just tell me that for the first time, they really felt seen in the media. One young autistic Thomas fan told me shortly after we debuted the trailer for him, that he woke his mom up in the middle of the night crying tears of joy because there was someone in his favorite show that was a little bit like him. So I can't express how gratifying the feedback has been.
That's really neat. No, I want to ask you the same question. In part, I sort of feel like I know the answer, but taking notes and letting that evolve your creative process is an important part of it. So when you're writing for this competition, if you're going to be showing it to people, if you're going to be asking people, or even doing research about autistic people that you can meet and the way that might inform your character, how did you go through that process with Nason, where you had the idea of what he was based on your brother versus what the character ended up becoming?
Yeah, so I'm telling you, we're creating Nason with Netflix, the Barack and Michelle Obama's Higher Ground production company, Chris Nee, Cary Grant, who was the showrunner, was really a dream. It really was, just from like start to finish. And the character of Nason, it turned out more beautiful, honestly, than I think I even envisioned when I pitched it, because I was working also so intimately with the show. Not only was I, pitching for a story, I was also the script coordinator, working very closely with the team. And so I had been working with Cary for so many months before I got the chance to pitch. And because this story was so personal to me, she was so generous in saying like, hey, do you want to look at the design? Do you want to get feedback on the animatic, which is uncommon, I will say, of a freelancer writer. Usually you write your outline, your script, you send it in, it goes down the pipeline. But I was very lucky to have generous leaders guiding me in this process. So when I pitched Nason, I pitched him as, a 13-year-old or 11. And then he was 11. No, he was 13 because I wanted him to be older than the other kids. He was 13 years old. He was taller than our main cast. He was a young Black boy. And so those things all stuck. And even his height, like they didn't try to make him shorter. There wasn't a conversation of, is he going to look too big? It's like, no, let's create the character that you're pitching. And I got to look at the designs and be very thoughtful in the pattern because, so with some people with autism, they do love repetitive behaviors and they have very fixated, colors. Like if they love green, green is everywhere, those kinds of things. As honestly, a lot of people do. I had a pink when I was into pink, pink was everywhere you could find it. So when, working with Nason, like he also loved the color green. And so making sure that was in his backpack and his shirt. And then when we got to the animatic stage, really wanting to make sure, again, we were doing this as authentically as possible. And I remember we got the first pass of the animatic and his stemming, because I had Nason stemming with his hands the way that my brother does. It felt cartoonish, ironically enough. It just felt not authentic. And so I had actually sent some samples or some, research I had found of what stemming actually looked like and sent it to the animators, and they sent another pass, and it was wonderful. And so it really was such a great experience all the way through. And then to what Daniel said, we also got some like a consultant to come in and help with reading the script that gave me insight into my brother that I had never had, because he is nonverbal and can't communicate the way that others can. And then we also had the character was voiced by a nonverbal teenager with autism who voiced the vocalizations of my brother. So the process from start to finish was incredible, and the team was amazing. Our casting director, everyone who touched this episode touched it with such heart, and it was really a great process.
Oh, that's fantastic. Kirk, some of the things that Naya was talking about sound like they might have cost money. And all of these animated shows are going to be budgeted. When you are looking at a script that comes in, when you're sort of considering whether you're going to hire somebody to be on your team, or even to maybe buy a script, or not buy a script, but produce the script, how much do budgetary considerations come into play? I happen to know that for particular shows that I worked on at Warner Brothers Animation that were 2D animation style, that setting it in a new location was difficult because you had to hire somebody to paint the background. And that in a computer generated show, if you have multiple new speaking characters, each character costs money to make. So when you're looking at a script, though, in a contest like this, how much do you anticipate? How much would you like the writers of these scripts to consider the budgetary consequences of their script?
Well, in the contest, the nice thing is it's not going to be produced. So you do have some freedom. In a show, everything costs money, but you should be aware, just some general knowledge for you is, yeah, you'll be on a show and they'll say you can have, we know we took your pitch for 7 characters, but you can only use 3 characters. Or, oh, you know what? I know the script's done, but we had to revise the budgets. You need to cut out 2 of the locations. People think since it's drawn, it doesn't cost money. You have to pay a voice actor, so sometimes you can have a character in the background. My big secret is sometimes my big trick is sometimes we'll get shows with a bigger budget because the producers somehow go, oh, this sounds more expensive. So I will make sure I get everything I can out of that. So I'll create a mall, I'll create a spaceship, I'll do everything I can because I know they have the budget for it. Obviously, because I'm thinking down the road on a long running show, like, hey, I want to have jetpacks. So on Hello Kitty, I was talking about jetpacks before I had jetpacks. I had a pitch that came through that really had nothing to do with jetpacks, but I had an unlimited budget. So I finally got my jetpacks. So, when you're a professional writer working for a company, which I think, a lot of people want to create their own show, but even when you create your own show, a budget's going to come into play. But for this contest, have fun with it. But I'm also looking for someone. I mean, I'm not specifically looking for someone to hire. That's not what this contest entails. But I'm looking for someone. Ultimately, I think if I'm looking at something, I'm going to think, you know what? I think this person they have a good grasp on what a professional script is and something that's reasonable.
Yeah.
If I was down to 2 scripts, like take 2 SpongeBob scripts, and one took place in a whole another dimension and it sounded really expensive, and one was just using existing sets, if everything else was equal, I would go for the one that used the resources the best because that's a guy I would want to hire. I'm not hiring them in this contest, but that's something I would look for because I'm telling you, it's not the most talented writers or the most brilliant writers to get the job done. It's the people that can work within the framework, give you great ideas, and be a huge team player. So those skills you get working at Starbucks are literally skills I developed at 16 working at McDonald's are still skills I use in my job.
That's a really, really great piece of advice.
So everything you're doing is going towards you being a professional. So, Britt, to answer your question, yeah, you know what? You in your head think, okay, I'm really pitching this to SpongeBob. Maybe I should try to make it fit in their voice, fit it in their tone, fit it in the budget. So that's actually a really good question.
Yeah, I think it's a neat one. And the one from Robert is some of the shows that are out there are 22-minute shows, but the contest is asking for an 11-minute script. As the person, to the extent, does that matter to you, Kirk, as you're looking at the contest? If my personal opinion is the script should be 11 minutes to take it easy on the people who are running the competition and doing the judging and reading. But I'm curious to know what your thought is. If a show that in its natural form is 22 minutes, does it still need to be whittled down to 11 for the purpose of the competition?
Again, it goes down to professionalism. I am constantly, and I know Daniel and I will tell me too, you always have more material than you can fit in. I am forced to meet a certain page count. And so if someone puts in a 55-page SpongeBob script, I'm probably just going to look at that and go, they don't understand, you know. I get it, it's our personal story, but they don't understand because if they're working on a show, you cannot turn in, you know. So I would say stick as close. I know someone who's entering the contest. They asked me to read their script, and I told them, I said, well, if I read your script, I can't judge it. So I think you're probably better off if I don't know anything about it. Because the thing is, my point of the story is the person who is entering is a professional writer, so that can scare all you guys to do your best. A professional writer that's a peer of mine that I work with, but he said, "Oh, I read the rules, and it said it has to be an 11 minute, and what I was sending was a 22, so I'm going to go ahead and edit it down to fit the format." That's the thoughts of someone that is a professional or wants to be a professional. So again, your job is to impress when you enter something, you know, impress the judges, show them that you're ready to work. Because ultimately that's what I'm looking for is I want to move someone up and get someone a meeting with, you know, I want someone to win a prize so they can move up the ladder. You
Mhm.
know, so if I see someone who maybe their script's not the most original, but I go, this guy seems like they're ready to work, I'm going to move that person up. Or the person who, well, I've told you my life story. It's so emotional. It's 55 pages, and you don't understand. If I get this through, I'm going to revolutionize Hollywood. That's not someone I'm looking to hire. That's someone that
Yeah.
needs to pursue it, of course, pursue your dreams, but you might want to make a short film of that. So
Yeah.
you're showing us you can follow color in the lines, but use some super cool colors and catch our attention.
I think that's really important. And it's not trying to jam something that belongs in a different competition into this competition. It's, you know, Kirk has laid out, I think, really well what people who hire animation writers are looking for. So you should use this as an opportunity to show that you can do that. And in something else where you show that you can write a feature, for example, or a Game of Thrones or Stranger Things episode based on Christian's question. You know, those are great ideas and great things to want to do, but not necessarily appropriate for this. This is an 11-minute kids animated series scriptwriting competition. Seth had a question about the financial data regarding whether having explicitly autistic characters has benefited studios. I'm just going to very briefly try and answer that. And the super very short answer is no. I'm sure they have data that gives them the answers, and I'm quite confident the answer is no. Because if there were, they would make more of them. You know, when Julia appeared on Sesame Street and became part of the ensemble, Julia did not become Elmo. You know, you're not buying a Tickle Me Julia doll. And that's just by looking at it, you can tell, like, okay, that's not one that captured characters' imaginations. So is there going to be an autistic character bump? I mean, probably not. That what there's a good story bump and there's an engaging character bump. And if that character happens to be autistic, then terrific. But I don't think that in and of itself, the audience isn't like, now you're filling in the blanks for something I needed. What the audience is interested in is something that is good. And so it's most important that you write a script that is good. Daniel, I want to make sure that we're kind of running out of time here. We got about 6 minutes left. But what advice would you offer to an autistic writer, specifically submitting a script to the Auspeck Awards?
Yeah, for sure. And I kind of covered this mostly a little bit, but the main thing is just don't focus on those autistic traits. I want to see just a great story that happens to feature an autistic character, because if you can do that, that's what most people are going to be drawn in by. Most people are looking for a show explicitly to say, let me watch an autistic character. No, I want to watch a fun show, whether that's a kid's show about trains or a more adult thing. Uh, they're looking for something that's going to entertain them. So what you need to do, and the best way to buy in and the best way to teach people about autism and all that stuff, is to tell a great story that's emotional, that has all the action or comedy or drama that's going to draw people in, and put your autistic character in there. Because when you have your premise and you have your character, uh, the autistic traits are going to be in there. You're going to get that education, and people are going to be entertained, and they're going to want to see more, and that helps people to understand the autistic folks in their communities, and or maybe to better understand themselves in some ways, versus just like I said, having a story that's just a list of characters, list of character traits or things like that. Just just tell me a good story. It's that simple.
Daniel, Atticus Baldwin wants to know how you got the job on Thomas, by the way. He's a big Thomas fan.
For sure, for sure. I I did a postgrad certificate in children's media, specifically because I wanted uh, to introduce more autistic characters and things. Um, and one day I was just looking at some writers groups that I'm a part of, and I saw a post from a major media company. They didn't say who. That was looking for an autistic writer to help them with one of their legacy brands, which they also didn't say the brand. So I didn't have any experience, but I had some samples, so I sent some stuff in, and I didn't really hear back from them for a while. I kind of forgot about it, and then all of a sudden, several months later, I get an email from Mattel asking if I want to work on Thomas and Friends. So no pressure.
That's fantastic. Um, to any of you, but I'll just throw this at Naya. Seth Wegger Thompson was asking, what other ways can we interest children without using excitement? I was trying to think of like what's an answer to trying to engage kids without using excitement, especially considering the cohort that's maybe on this call, where
Mhm.
excitement sometimes can feel like too much.
Yeah, well, I'm more of a emotional girl myself. So if excitement, I'll give you another E, emotion. Let's go there because I think to what Daniel said earlier about creating a character that has deep empathy, right? Like people who have autism at the end of the day are people, right? And they experience life maybe differently than we might experience, but even neurotypical people experience life differently. So I think maybe think about an emotional way to connect or to reach someone within a story. And I'm trying to think of another, not necessarily E, but yeah, no, I just feel like emotion's fun. I think if excitement might be too overwhelming, I'm thinking of something else, like maybe almost like a problem to solve. Like if it's not excitement, maybe there's a problem solving element, because in every script you have there has to be some type of conflict, something that you're solving. And so maybe they're trying to think of something like not a treasure hunt, but they're looking for something. They're investigative. So thinking of other ways that you can, reach an audience or a kid in particular that doesn't feel overwhelming. And again, going back to what personally affects you, like if you're someone who easily gets overwhelmed, what are things that interest you outside of like excitement and lights? So that would be my advice.
We're
Can
down to our last minute. I
one
wanted to
thing
squeeze
real
in.
quick?
Oh, sorry. Go
Oh,
ahead,
sorry.
Daniel.
Sorry, go ahead. Just if I can just add to that, when I talked about, I totally agree with Naya. When I talked about action and things like that, action doesn't always have to be, there's a big chase scene or a fight or something like that. Um, my my one of my favorite episodes that I wrote was just about Bruno and Diesel getting trapped in a canyon together, and Bruno trying to figure out why Diesel feels bad because Diesel feels like he got them trapped. So a lot of it was just conversation, and we still found ways to keep it interesting because we talked about emotions. We did it in an authentic way. So there's lots of ways you can keep the audience engaged.
I think that's great. The last question. I have moments in my job where I'm quite confident that I'm right, and my boss tells me I'm wrong, and I still am quite confident that I'm right, and I need to learn to let go. I imagine you guys run into that when you have a good idea that you think this is a wonderful idea, and then something external or even internal is telling you it's time to move on from that idea, even though it's something that you liked. I guess I'll start with Kirk, but how do you know it's time to move on from an idea when you're writing a script?
When your boss tells you.
Well, but targeted towards this competition. Somebody's writing a script, they're showing it to their friends, or they're reading it out loud, or something like that. When do you? What's a sort of trigger internally when you know, like, ooh, I like that idea, but it just isn't right for the script?
I think you hit on something, a real quick tidbit. If you, again, you're a writer and you're just starting your research, and Daniel even mentioned he was in some writer groups. I'm sure Nye has been, I have been. do not write the script the last night of the competition. Start working on it. Even if it's a scene, read it with your friend, read it with your mom, read it to your dog. Get on Zoom with somebody. You need to hear how it sounds. And here's a real pro tip. I'm going to leave you. Final Draft Pro will read back your script to you. I literally listen to all my scripts at least a dozen times before I send in a draft. I listen to how the words sound. It helps me catch typos because I have a lot of typos, so I catch them that way. But I make sure the dialogue sounds good. So even if you don't have a friend like me and I have to have my Final Draft Pro read it back to me, you have no excuse. So remember, a script is written, but a script is performed and heard. So you need to be sharing your entry with others before we see it. And I'm gonna be able to tell who did that and who didn't, because you're going to write chunks of dialogue, like paragraphs, which is not something you do in animation. So,
Well, let me wrap up because we're sliding over, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I do want to emphasize that though, Kirk, something that some advice that we've talked about as we've talked about this competition and broadly in trying to be a successful writer. An important part of making your way as a Hollywood writer will be your social group, and it's particularly important, maybe even especially for the people on this call, that you consciously, affirmatively put together a social group of people who are interested in what you're interested in, and find a way to meet people and socialize and go to mixers and go to message boards and groups and anything that you can find, conventions, and consciously put yourself out there and find a social group, because so much of getting hired in Hollywood is going to be so and so got on a show. Oh, do you know anybody who can write? And that's the answer. They're not going to run a competition to try and find the best writer for their show. They're going to say, who do you know? Who do you know? Who is in front of me? Because the person who just got that gig to hire writers has a million other things to do also. So you need to put yourself in a position where socially you're finding out about other competitions. You're finding out about what shows are hiring. You're finding out about what programs people are using, what new ideas are people kicking around. If all of a sudden everybody's doing horror and you were just sitting by yourself, you wouldn't know that that was sort of a big coming trend, or that's somebody who was, or a field where you could try and get into. So really do your very best to get out there and to get yourself known by other people, by nurturing your friend group, by finding new friend groups also, by being social, because that really is it's not, I can't say, I guess it's just as important as the quality of the writing, but it's really, really important. It's important enough that you should consider it a part of the job.
it's a relationship business, 100%. But remember, the first time you go someplace, you don't know anybody. Literally, everybody starts that way. My first things I would go to, I knew nobody. And then you would go and go, I kind of wasted my time. And you go to second one, you meet more people, and pretty soon it becomes your social group. Because we're in a business where you don't really apply except for competitions. People call you and you're sitting there going, well, I don't know anybody. Well, you get to know people, and it takes a long time. Some people I've seen it do quicker because they're the right person for the job and the right opportunity, but they're hiring you. They're not hiring your script's sort of like the check mark, the blue check. They're hiring you because they want you on their team, and you want to be the guy, and just be yourself. Don't power network because no one wants anybody to put a business card in their face. Just meet people and be yourself. You will find your social group. Don't be depressed because you're at a comic convention and you want, oh, if I could just talk to these people that are on the panel, I know they'd hire me. No, they're never going to hire you. Know who's going to hire you? Your buddy to the side who's 3 years down the road going to get a job, and he's going to can't do it, and he's going to suggest you, and you're going to go and fill in. So I think that is, and you guys have already taken the step, and you have a great organization to be part of. And I know one of the challenges, especially for people on the spectrum, is social. I know if it's hard for me because I'm very social. If it's hard for me, I can only imagine what it's like. But don't be intimidated. Just go out and be yourself. Be your authentic self, and you'll meet the right people.
That's really great. I want to thank Daniel, Kirk, and Naya for being a part of this. I'm sure it was really helpful to the people listening, and I'm just really grateful that I get the opportunity to talk with people like you guys about something that I care so much about.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Great job, panel. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for attending. It's always great having you. We've got a great one next month, so looking forward to seeing you there.
And good luck, everybody.
Thank you.
Swing.
Yes.
We look forward to seeing your scripts.
Go for it.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Naya. Thank you so much.
Thank you.